Urgent. The Ukrainian armed forces have harshly cut off power in Russia. Putin missed a key phase of the war and found himself at the epicenter of an apocalypse. Donetsk is in an uproar. The Russians dropped a bomb on their own people and they couldn't hide it. Shock, Kupiansk became a thorn in the dictator's side. Our forces pulled it off. A triumph everyone is talking about. The Octopus interceptor drone is reaching a new level with large-scale production launched. Wow, Turkey is putting an end to the war. Preparations for decisive negotiations are underway. The US is turning on its full power. Trump is tightening the screws even on Putin's friends. And all of this is happening right now. Hello, I'm Darina Hutsakalo and we're getting started. Urgent, Russia has found itself trapped in catastrophe. In the Kursk region, unidentified drones struck the Tsinkum plant, which produces materials for the occupiers' equipment, ammunition, and electronics. Overnight, explosions also reached the Oriol CHP plant and the Veshkaima substation in the Ulyanovsk region. Donetsk, too, is wide awake tonight. Ukrainian forces sent warm greetings to the temporarily occupied territories. After the Chaikin substation was hit, about 500,000 residents in Donetsk, Makiivka, Horlivka, and Yasinuvata were left without electricity. Retribution has come down hard on the Russians. In the border village of Hrafivka in Belgorod region, an aerial bomb exploded, which had been designated by Russian aviation for a strike on Ukrainian territory. Z channels can't contain their emotions.
The explosion of the aerial bomb damaged 3 social facilities, 8 apartment buildings, and 33 private homes. Gladkov called this the result of shelling.
At first, the local authorities carefully tried to cover up the actions of the Russian military, and surprisingly, they managed to do so for a while. Since the explosion of the munition coincided in time with the drone attack, first, a Russian aerial bomb detonated in the village, and only after that did a drone strike Hrafivka. However, the truth still came to light. The Russian army is gradually losing control over Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. Ukraine's defense forces made a decisive statement.
There is a trend showing that the Russians are gradually losing ground. They are losing control over the city and over those areas where they used to be. These are the northern districts where they entered and tried to establish themselves. But there are fewer of them there now as a result of effective countermeasures. For now, it can't be called a victory. At this stage, it's still a work in progress.
This is yet another proof that Putin's fantasies about encircling the city have remained nothing but dreams. And the so-called Potemkin capture ended in disgrace for the Russian mercenaries.
Russian troops in Kupiansk were ordered to simulate control over the city by waving Russian flags wherever their small groups are present. The occupiers started putting flags into supply packages for their own soldiers, which are dropped onto the city using drones. At least one such operation has already taken place.
Moreover, the Russians are also losing positions in Donetsk. Ukraine's defense forces have pushed the enemy back near Shakov. Ukrainian land is being methodically liberated from enemy hands. Meanwhile, Ukraine is scaling up production of the Octopus interceptor drone. Russia is already visibly nervous about this turn of events.
This is the first example of scaling up a combat solution within the new framework from the army to the manufacturer. It involves transferring a standardized military development into the hands of industry.
For the state, this means lower costs, less risk of important information leaking, and the opportunity to profit from selling its own technology in the future. Previously, Ukrainian developments often ended up abroad, with the budget receiving nothing from this, so more is yet to come. Breaking news. Negotiations between Russia and Ukraine are inevitable. Turkey is preparing for a historic event. The country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has revealed the first details.
The war must end. We believe negotiations are inevitable. Personally, I believe that talks will resume. Of course, we cannot go into details. This could happen in Turkey, it could happen elsewhere, but I believe that this peace will definitely come.
According to Fidan, for 3 or 4 years there were forces that did not want the war to end, but even they are now beginning to change their position. The United States of America has also taken another decisive step. Donald Trump announced possible sanctions against countries doing business with the Russian Federation. The vice around Moscow seems to be tightening faster and faster.
I've heard that they're doing this, and that suits me just fine. They're passing legislation. The Republicans are introducing a very tough bill with sanctions and so on against any country that does business with Russia. They might add Iran to this as well, as you know. I suggested this. So any country that does business with Russia will be sanctioned very strictly. We can add Iran to this formula.
It should be noted that the proposed bill would allow Trump to impose tariffs of up to 500% on imports from countries that buy Russian energy resources. This especially concerns major consumers such as China and India. Now, obviously, Iran will not escape the same fate. Urgently, Ukraine has unleashed an apocalypse. The oil heart of the Russian Federation has burned to the ground. Retaliation for the shelling of Ukraine has made Russia gasp for air. Life has turned into hell. Prime targets have turned to ashes. Watch next in the report to see how our fighters are burning down the enemy's economy.
From the plan to take Kyiv in 3 days to total blackouts and the introduction of a state of emergency right in Russia itself.
We're feeling bored, it's a period of stagnation, and honestly, we really want some excitement and action in our lives.
Thanks to the bunker dweller and Ukrainian drones, in some regions of Russia, as Putin would say, things are getting really wild. For example, last night in the Krasnodar region, the distinctive sounds of incoming strikes, sirens, alerts, and explosions were heard in Gelendzhik, Anapa, and Novorossiysk. As a result, in Novorossiysk alone, last night's attack damaged an oil depot and the Sheskari's transshipment complex, one of Russia's largest oil terminals through which a significant portion of Putin's oil exports pass. Part of the coastal facilities was also destroyed, local officials report. In addition, debris from already downed drones damaged the storage tank and the pier of Chernomorsk Transneft. The latter led to the actual suspension of oil pumping to the port of Novorossiysk. A state of emergency has been declared in the city itself. It would later turn out that the state of emergency in the city was introduced not for the safety of citizens, but to conceal the aftermath of the strikes. After all, not only the Russian oil refinery was hit, but also the local military unit. On its territory, there was a unit of air defense troops, at least one S-400 system, and an ammunition depot. One of the eyewitnesses actually filmed the moment the Russian ammunition depot was hit. This was the first time something like this happened. Afterburner. At the football match. After the footage was published, Russian Z-War correspondents quickly noticed that a Ukrainian drone couldn't have reached the target that fast. But a missile could have. The worst fears of the Kremlin were soon confirmed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Last night, our soldiers successfully used long-range Neptunes against designated targets on Russian territory. This is our entirely justified response to the ongoing Russian terror. Ukrainian missiles are delivering increasingly tangible and precise results almost every month.
And although Zelensky did not specify in his statement which exact targets the armed forces of Ukraine struck, experts have virtually no doubts.
Based on official sources that publish videos and generally provide officially verified, reliable and credible information, there is reason to believe that this type of Ukrainian weaponry is starting to appear in greater numbers and is being used more extensively against the Russian Federation.
As a result, Ukrainian attacks are becoming significantly larger in scale each time. So, in addition to Novorossiysk, the Ukrainian armed forces once again targeted the Saratov oil refinery last night. A week earlier, Ukrainian drones had already struck the oil refinery. At that time, the facility had to be temporarily shut down. Now, hopefully, the refinery will finally be shut down. For good.
There are simply too many military targets on the territory of the Russian Federation that need to be taken out. And then the lights in Moscow will go out almost automatically. When certain facilities on the territory of the Russian Federation go dark, we won't have to try too hard for the lights to go out in Russia as a whole. A light bulb and a meter. That will definitely happen. And
while the proud Russian eagle slowly sinks into twilight.
What are you doing, lighting up? I don't know. I'm just sitting here. I'm fine. Some kind of third summer? Yeah. Anyway, they're launching rockets from our airstrip apparently. There it is.
The local residents still can't recover from the recent raid by Ukrainian drones.
I don't really know if it was actually the right thing to do or not, but I went outside and, well, it was burning out there.
And all this, even though the Ukrainian armed forces, unlike the Russian army, strike exclusively at legitimate military targets of the Kremlin. Just imagine what will happen when the Ukrainian Flamingo joins the attacks in full force. And we will be able to get our hands on long-range Neptunes in just the coming months. After all, according to experts, serial production of the latest Ukrainian weapons has already begun. Which means things are only going to get worse from here. At least for Russia's military-industrial complex and oil industry.
it's quite a diverse range which allows for the destruction, targeting and mass elimination of objects on the territory of the Russian Federation. Even at significant distances from the borders or the line of combat engagement. This, in fact, is quite a serious and positive indicator that, step by step and systematically, we are taking out key targets on the territory of the Russian Federation, including destroying military production.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Kupiansk and Pokrovsk are now emergency zones. These are the final moments for the aggressor. Putin is furious. The Ukrainian armed forces have succeeded. Pokrovsk is coming under the control of Ukrainian infantry. The clearing operation is proceeding block by block. Putin is in shock. The front line has become a death zone for the enemy. Watch further for all the latest details from the front line.
The Ukrainian army is clearing Pokrovsk of occupiers. Infantry groups are moving into the eastern part of the city. Additional units are reinforcing positions, establishing new blocking lines, and beginning to clear the neighborhoods. Telegram channels report that the control zones into which Pokrovsk can be conditionally divided are currently as follows. The southern and southwestern parts are under the control of the occupiers. The area around the railway in the center is a gray zone. The north remains under the control of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. Changes in weather conditions are being used by both sides for logistical purposes, to conduct rotation of personnel. At the moment, fighting is ongoing in Krosky for control over the industrial zone. This includes the area of the meat processing plant and the feed mill, where the situation is the most difficult. The Ukrainian Defense Forces control the area with high-rise buildings which the occupiers are trying to seize in order to use them as commanding heights to control the logistics of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. The situation in Pokrovsk is difficult but not hopeless. The city is under constant attack by the Russian army, which is receiving a worthy response from the Ukrainian armed forces. And here is a living, or rather not so living anymore, example of the defense. In these shots, you can see the elimination of Russia's 51st Army near Pokrovsk. Relying on the weather conditions, the occupiers felt quite carefree, which ultimately led to their elimination. Nevertheless, the enemy is planning an offensive with two armies from two directions on Hryshine, where they intend to meet and close the encirclement. These plans are being thwarted by the Ukrainians, who have no intention of leaving Pokrovsk. The Ukrainian Defense Forces have managed to significantly improve their tactical position in the area of Rodinska, a key logistical hub for the Ukrainian Defense Forces. Moreover, on the so-called Dobropilya direction, the occupiers have been forced to acknowledge the successful nature of the Ukrainian Defense Forces' counterattacks aimed at preventing the expansion of the enemy's presence in areas where they have tried to wedge into Ukrainian defenses. From the north and west, Russian invaders are advancing in the Kupiansk direction. The positions of the defense forces are being attacked by small enemy infantry groups supported by Russian drones, which is the only barely effective offensive tactic the occupiers have here, allowing them to at least report the capture of a street. During the day, they made significant progress along Dzerzhinskoho Street, liberating 7 large buildings. In Kupiansk, the Russian tactics are similar to those in Pokrovsk. Here, the defense forces control about half of the city. The enemy's objective in the Kupiansk direction is to push Ukrainian units out of the left bank of the Oskil River, capture the Borova bridgehead and the Izium Sviatohirsk-Lyman area, and thereby create a flank for an offensive on Sloviansk. And here is another foreigner, a citizen of Iraq, who was captured in the Kupiansk area by our fighters from the 125th Brigade. The Russians are disgusting. They treat people with cruelty and kill them. They force people to do things they don't want to do. Allah Muhammad Tajil came to Russia on a tourist visa. But as we can see, in Russia, everyone has to fight, even foreign tourists. So the man was given several options to choose from: death, prison, or a contract with the Russian armed forces. My friend asked Russian soldiers for help to get to the Iraqi embassy in Russia, but they refused him. As a result, the person in the video became so fed up with interacting with Russians that he ran toward Kupiansk to surrender to the Ukrainians, realizing it was his only chance to survive. Britain opens fire on the Kremlin. A secret strike from London. Shock. This weaponry will be a game-changing reinforcement for the armed forces of Ukraine. A decisive turning point. Watch further to see the invincible arsenal our forces will receive. Putin has gone too far. The US has responded to the dictator's so-called miracle weapon. I probably can't add anything new here. You've already added everything possible, that's for sure. First, Putin announced the completion of decisive tests of the intercontinental cruise missile with a nuclear engine, the Burevestnik, which, according to him, has no analogues in the world. As is known, in terms of flight range, the Burevestnik surpasses all known missile systems in the world. After that, he reported a successful launch of the nuclear torpedo Poseidon from a submarine. This is the unmanned underwater vehicle called Poseidon, which is also fully equipped with advanced, specialized systems and technologies. The nuclear power unit. For the first time, not only did the launch crew manage to launch it from the submarine carrier, but they also started up the nuclear power unit. But all the threats turned out to be pointless. And now Putin should think carefully about what tall tales to tell next time. After all, Washington has now given a clear response, showing the world its new nuclear weapon. On October 29th, a bomber was spotted over California with an unusual object under its wing. It was the latest nuclear missile developed as part of a secret program to modernize the US nuclear arsenal. Defense News called it a leap into a new era of strategic deterrence, noting that the missile is smaller, stealthier, and far more lethal than its predecessors. It is built using stealth technology, which allows it to evade detection by enemy radars. The public appearance of the missile under the wing of a B-52 bomber was its first demonstration in an actual flight. And this was an official test flight, not a training exercise. With a range of over 2,400 kilometers, the new missile allows American bombers to strike even beyond the reach of the most advanced air defense systems. Let us recall that at the end of October, US President Donald Trump ordered the Pentagon to immediately begin testing nuclear weapons after Putin boasted to everyone about the capabilities of the Burevestnik. Well, let's see what the Russian dictator will brag about next.
That brings our broadcast to a close. We continue to monitor the most important events right now to be the first to tell you about them. Don't forget to subscribe. See you!